let's talk about running backs that you should start or sit in week 11 of the fantasy football season. Keep in mind, there are two teams on bye. You've got the Colts and the Saints. So no Jonathan Taylor. I know a lot of y'all are going to look for replacements. No Alvin Kamara. But don't worry, in today's video, I'm going through every single matchup, and you're going to have my rankings for every single running back, so you'll be prepared for this week. I appreciate y'all being here. Do me a favor, hit the like button and show some love. Subscribe if you find any value at some point, during this video. Let's start off with Thursday Night Football. We've got the Jets at the Patriots. 44.5 point over under. The Pats are favored by 10.5 points, which makes a lot of sense. They're clearly the best play, which makes a ton of sense because clearly they're the better team in this matchup. Breece Hall, look, it's a bad matchup against the Patriots. The Patriots are a bottom 6 matchup for your fantasy running backs this year. Very difficult. Only Sean Tucker, who did it last week, has ran for 50 or more rushing yards against this defense. However, we just saw last week Breece Hall against the most difficult rushing defense in the NFL. That is the Cleveland Browns. And in that game, he had 22 total touches. After the bye week, the Jets kept him. They didn't trade him. And then they're going to feed him opportunities. He had 83 rushing yards, including a 42-yard receiving touchdown, 19.5 fantasy points. So if he can get something done against the worst matchup in the NFL, then I still would consider him a must start against the Patriots. But of course, there is bust potential because of how bad that offense is, point blank period. Now, on the opposite side of this ball, the Patriots running back room is going to be a little bit difficult to digest this week if Ramondre Stevenson is active. This was on Monday, and it was just a estimation for Thursday night. You'll know more by the time you're watching this video. But Ramondre Stevenson had that toe injury. He's been out 2 games. He was practicing in a limited fashion, as well as Terrell Jennings. So the way my rankings are being shown right now is as if both Stevenson and Henderson are playing. If they're both playing, I do still prefer Ramondre Stevenson. And this is coming from a Travion Henderson guy. I mean, he was my guy this year. I believe in the kid, but I just don't believe that even though he played incredibly last week and showed how dynamic and explosive he can be, I just don't believe that Vrabel is going to take the job away from Ramondre Stevenson. Sure, Henderson probably earned more opportunities, but it will still be a split backfield. And I do think this is a pretty good matchup for the against the Jets, considering they lost Sauce Gardner. They lost their best defensive tackle in Quinnen Williams. So they are both startable names, low-end RB2s, high-end RB3 flexible options. And they should be winning this game, so there should be plenty of opportunities for both of these running backs. Now, if Ramondre Stevenson is out, that would send Travion Henderson to the moon. He would be an absolute non-negotiable must-start, a top 15 play for me in fantasy football. He's getting work on the ground. He's getting work in the air. So that is best-case scenario for Henderson owners is if Stevenson is not out there, he becomes a smash start. Okay, let's go to the international game. We've got Madrid. It's the Commanders at the Dolphins. I feel so bad for any Spanish people out there who are about to go see the NFL for the first time, and it's the Commanders at the Dolphins. Geez, what are we doing, NFL? Look, 47.5 point over under, so a very high over under. The Dolphins are favored by only 1.5 points. Very close spread. Vegas anticipates a very close game. Let's talk about the Commander running back room because it is very difficult to digest at this very moment. So the way my rankings are being shown is as if Chris Rodriguez is not playing. He started the last game. That's very true. However, he injured his shoulder and didn't play much in the second half of that game. If he's out, Bill Krosky-Merritt, who's been bad, he's been awful. Let's be on the same page. He's not been great, but the offense hasn't been good either. He is a spot start, my RB28, simply because the Commanders should be competitive. They shouldn't be down too much in this game. It should be a back and forth affair, and the Dolphins are the 8th best matchup for your fantasy running back. So again, in the event that there's no Chris Rodriguez, I would start Bill Krosky-Merritt as a flex RB3. Now, if Chris Rodriguez is active, we're going to flop that around. You're going to start Chris Rodriguez with a lot more confidence, honestly, and then we're going to sit Bill Krosky-Merritt confidently. But whoever's a starting first and second out running back for this team, I want to play them against the Dolphins if you're in a desperate situation. Now, on the opposite side, we don't need to take things, too drawn out here. Devon Achane, you're going to start him. Duh, that's not hard. You guys know that. Dan Quinn did take over as a defensive coordinator in Washington, so we'll see what they've changed up, but De'Aaron Payne won't be there. all of Washington's defense is constantly getting injured each and every week. It's like my fantasy team in the Flock League, but Devon Achane should have a dominant day. Okay, this brings us to the start of the first slate of Sunday games. Panthers at Falcons, 42.5 point over under. Falcons are favored by 3.5 points. Rico Dowdle, absolute must start. There is no question about it. He is the guy in this Panthers offense. He's not just the RB1. He is the engine of this offense. Another week where he is just completely dominant from a usage perspective. In this game, he had 18 carries, 3 targets, 42 snaps, just 11 snaps for Chuba Hubbard. He turned that into over 15 fantasy points because he got into the end zone on the ground. He was absolutely dominant. And you will see the Panthers are taking it a step further. On third downs, they're also giving him the work now. He played 9 out of 11 third downs, just 2 for Chuba Hubbard. He is that dark blue. He dominated running back usage. And even when this team is down, they're going to run the ball. When they're up, they're going to run the ball. Falcons are a pretty decent matchup. You're going to start Rico Dowdle. Big expectations this week. Now, for the Falcons, you're going to continue to start Bijan Robinson. I know it was disappointing last week, and I understand if, you're frustrated. Look, that's the nature of fantasy football, okay? Not everything can go your way each and every single week, but Bijan Robinson is still a dominant player. He still had 19 touches. They're actually putting him in the slot a lot as a receiver. They're using him in that different formations, which is getting Tyler Algier onto the field a little bit more. But we are going to start Bijan Robinson with a ton of confidence. Tyler Algier, I would not chase last week's game or the week before that. You cannot guarantee a touchdown each and every week. And if he doesn't get a touchdown, he probably busts for fantasy football. Okay, let's go to the Bucs at the Bills. 49.5 point over under, one of the highest of the week. The Bills are favorited by 5.5 points in this matchup. Two pretty good matchups And it's funny because both the Bucs and the Bills are net positive matchups for your running backs. So with James Cook, it's fairly simple. You're going to put him into your lineup. You're going to start him. I know it was a weird game last week versus Miami, but they're going to get back on track. And on the opposite side of the field here with the Bucs, reports came out today that they are not planning on playing Bucky Irving this week. Rick Stroud said no expectations of Godwin Irving practicing this week. He asked about Irving twice, and they said he has to prove he can take a hit on his shoulder. Greg Auman as well reported the same exact thing. They're not sure exactly when Bucky Irving is going to be back, but according to all sources, he will not play this week. If you're frustrated, I'm frustrated. I get it. It's been really, really frustrating. Rachaad White is a spot start. I wouldn't consider him a must start. I do prefer him versus Sean Tucker. And the reason I prefer him is just because of the work that he gets in the air. He's going to be the guy where if the Bucs are down in games, they're going to have Rachaad White on the field because he's a fantastic pass catcher. So he has a safer floor. In this last game, Rachaad White played 50 snaps, just 22 for Sean Tucker. But from a touches perspective, Sean Tucker had 9 carries, 10 for Rachaad White. But again, Rachaad White had 5 targets compared to 2 for Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker was far more efficient with his touches, 53 rushing yards on 9 attempts, just 38 on 10 for Rachaad White, averaging under 4 yards per carry. He's a career under 4 yards per carry guy anyway when he's a starter for the Bucs. But look, you're going to start Rachaad White if you're going to start one of these names, but I don't think Sean Tucker is the worst play in the world. He's my RB36 this week, so a low-end RB3, high-end RB4, desperation flex at best. And that's because the Bills, you really want to attack these guys on the ground. They are suspect to be beaten on the ground as a defense. And if the Bucs are able to be up in this game, it's in Buffalo, then Sean Tucker, there is a world where he has a really important game for this team. Of course, if Bucky Irving is active, you start Bucky, but it's just not going to happen. So let's not get our hopes up. Okay, let's go to the Chargers at the Jags. 44.5 point over under. And honestly, this game is fairly simple. We go really in depth on games that need that attention. This game does not need that attention. You start Kamani Vidal. There will be up and down games, but you saw last week, even in a tough matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kamani Vidal came out there. He was the dominant running back for this team. He had 26 total touches, 25 of them being rushing attempts, got into the end zone, over 17 PPR points. And this is the last week you're probably going to be able to start him. Omarion Hampton should be back after the bye, so you might as well play him, my RB21. On the opposite side, we're going to start Etienne. The Jags keep telling us Etienne's their guy. They keep feeding him the rock. And until they tell us anything else, otherwise, you're going to play him. Okay, Bears at the Vikings, 46.5 point over under in this game. DeAndre Swift is going to be a must start for me in good and in bad matchups. He continues to be the RB1 for the Chicago Bears. You know, there was some talk about Kyle Monangai potentially getting more work in this game because of how impressive he was against the Bengals. But in this game, DeAndre Swift still the clear number one running back. He had 20 total touches, including 7 targets, while Kyle Monangai only had 8 touches. So the Bears talked about getting Monangai more involved, but ultimately, when push come to shove, it was still DeAndre Swift's backfield. You can see it broken down here. Monangai did get a goal line opportunity. He converted on it, but in the 2-minute drill, it was Swift. On third downs, early downs, short yardage, it's still DeAndre Swift's backfield for now. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, what we did see is we saw Aaron Jones completely take over this backfield on Sunday. Now, we saw that trending in previous weeks, but of course he went down with that shoulder injury and Jordan Mason ended up getting a lot of work. But in this game, they made it evident, extremely clear that it is not a 1A, 1B situation anymore. It is Aaron Jones is our guy and Jordan Mason is a spellback. Because in this game, he had 46 snaps, 16 for Jordan Mason. He had 14 total touches, just 5 for Jordan Mason. It's very evident that this team views Aaron Jones as their number one running back. You can see it broken down here. Aaron Jones is that light blue. On early downs, he's the guy on goal line, which is what we were worried about with Jordan Mason. He's a good goal line running back. Maybe they're going to utilize him there. No, Aaron Jones got it in the 2-minute drill on third downs, short yardage. It is Aaron Jones's world, and Jordan Mason is living in it. So those are must starts for Aaron Jones and DeAndre Swift. So just quickly, I want you guys to know that there is a free feature on the Flock site called the My Teams feature. If you sign up using my promo code LAND for a free account, you will gain access to the My Teams feature where you'll see expert consensus opinion, rankings, recent trades. So check that out in the pinned comment, completely free if you want to use that as your secret weapon. Okay, let's go to the Packers at the Giants. 44.5 point over under. The Packers are heavy favorites. I would anticipate Josh Jacobs having a massive day versus the Giants. First off, the Giants are the second best matchup for your running back when you adjust for schedule. He's my RB5 this week. They're heavy favorites. Even though it's in New York, they are heavy favorites. So Josh Jacobs should have another big day. Now, for the Giants, they just fired Brian Daboll, okay? So obviously tough luck for him because Dart looks like the dude that you want to build around. But with Malik Neighbors' injury, the Cam Scottaboo injury, the fact that the Giants keep losing these games that they're up in the fourth quarter, they had to let him go. So we don't know exactly what the new play caller here is going to think about Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary. I would lean on things not changing personally, which means that you'll probably see Tyrone Tracy lead the way. That's what happened last week, 16 total touches, and you will see Devin Singletary, a healthy dose of him. He'll get over 10 touches, but he will still be the spell back to Tyrone Tracy. That's how I anticipate things going out. So if you're going to start one of these names, it is Tyrone Tracy. I will say both of them have very low floors and low ceilings, but because of the work I expect Tracy to get, I think he's a spot start at best. But of course, something crazy could happen. We could see Devin Singletary take over, Tyrone Tracy. We have to acknowledge that there is change, and that could bring change to the running back room. Okay, Bengals at Steelers. This is one of the highest, if not the highest, over-under of the week at 50.5 points. The Steelers are favorites by 5.5 points. You guys remember the last time these guys played, it was a Thursday night game, and the score was just ridiculous. I think it was like 70-plus points total between these two teams. Here's the good news for Jalen Warren. This is a fantastic matchup. The Bengals are the number one matchup for your fantasy running backs. Jalen Warren, last time out against this defense, went absolute sicko mode. He had 19.8 fantasy points, 127 rushing yards, almost 8 yards per carry. He was used in the air. He was used on the ground. He should dominate again in this game. Now, on the opposite side of this ball, Chase Brown, I am going to label a must start. And that's simply because with Joe Flacco, the offense is firing on all cylinders. They're able to sustain drives. Chase Brown is looking better on the ground. He's being involved in the air as well. And his biggest competition in this backfield, Samaje Perine, sustained a serious ankle injury. Now, one thing to note about the Bengals, Joe Burrow is returning to practice. So he has a 21-day practice window to be activated. So he's going to be playing football within the next 20 days by the time you're watching this. That's very exciting. Chase Brown, we talked about him as a buy low a couple weeks ago. We talked about it again last week. Go buy him if you can. Okay, Texans at Titans, 38.5 point over under, one of the lowest of the week. The Texans are favored by 7.5 points. They're heavy favorites, even though it's in Tennessee. Woody Marks. Where are my Woody Marks truthers out there, guys? We have been through the ups and the downs this season. We've been made fun of. We have been, enjoying in the highs and the lows. It's been a roller coaster. But here in week number 10, Woody Marks just absolutely dominated. He had 60 snaps, just 10 for Nick Chubb. He had 17 touches, just 6 for Nick Chubb. He was dominant. He looked great. He looked dynamic. He looked explosive. He was used in the air, on the ground, had the rushing touchdown. They didn't force it inside. They flipped it outside. He hit the edge, got the touchdown, has that juice that Nick Chubb just, let's be honest, quite frankly, Nick Chubb just does not have that juice. He had a career high in snap percentage, well over the 75% mark. We love to see that. Things are trending up for him. However, we have seen this before. And funnily enough, the last time the Texans played the Titans, we all thought Woody Marks was taking over this backfield. And then the very next game, Nick Chubb was the lead running back. I do believe this is Woody Marks' backfield. This was the first game that he actually started. However, Nick Chubb was dealing with an injury last week. We don't know how serious that injury was. Regardless, even if Nick Chubb starts, I am going to label Woody Marks the only must start in this matchup. The Titans are the third best matchup for your fantasy running backs. Last time Woody Marks faced this team, he completely dominated them. He's so dynamic in the air, on the ground. I am going to start him with a ton of confidence in this game. Nick Chubb could also have a fine game, by the way, because of the matchup. On the opposite side, it is completely risky to start either Tajay Spears or Tony Pollard. We have no idea who the Titans are going to prefer 1 week out. We have no idea who the Titans are going to prefer 1 week to the next. It's not a good offense. They're not sustaining drives. And let's be honest, the Texans defense is really difficult. I do not anticipate the Titans having some huge breakout after the bye where everything just clicks against this defense. I mean, so many offenses cannot figure it out against the Texans defense. So I'd be very hesitant to start a Tajay Spears and a Tony Pollard. They're desperation flexes at best. Okay, this brings us to the start of the second slate of Sunday games. We've got the 49ers at the Cardinals, high over under 48.5 points. We do anticipate a lot of fantasy points in this game. The 49ers are favored by just 3 points, so it could be a close affair. For McCaffrey, you're going to start him every single game. There's no point in really diving into CMC. He's going into everyone's lineups. What I will say about the 49ers is we could see Brock Purdy this week. There is potential. Reports are he's getting closer and closer. That doesn't really impact CMC. He's my RB1 this week, regardless of if Brock Purdy plays or not. On the opposite side of the ball here, Amari DiMercado and Michael Carter are both risky starts this week, and I am ranking this backfield as if Trey Benson is not going to be active. At the time of recording this, we've had no indication that tells us he would be active, so I'm just assuming that he won't. We will play that scenario if he is, but last week, Bam Knight sustained an injury. You saw a heavy dose of Amari DiMercado after that, 32 snaps. He only had 7 touches, right? And those 7 touches, he did convert on. He turned them into 13 fantasy points, 64 rushing yards, 40 receiving yards. He was very effective on the ground, through the air. However, here's the thing. The last time that Bam Knight wasn't involved in this backfield, Michael Carter took the first and second down work, and then Amari DiMercado was more of the third down running back. So and I'm assuming that Bam Knight is out, by the way, because of the ankle injury. If Bam Knight is out, this is how I'm ranking it. I prefer DiMercado because of his usage through the air, and I do anticipate the Cardinals being down, but it's very risky to start either of these names because you have no idea which one of them will be the guy. They could pick someone off the street and they could play for the Cardinals. It's just very, very, very risky. But DiMercado is the one that I have the most trust inbuilt with. And it is a good matchup against the Niners. They're pretty great. They're a pretty good matchup against running backs. Now, if Trey Benson is active, you start Benson and you sit everybody else. It becomes much more simple. But I'm not sure we're going to live in that world this week. Okay, Seahawks at Rams. High over under here, 48.5 points. Two offenses that are just clicking, man. They are just in their zone. 2.5-point favorites. The Los Angeles Rams are in this game. Man, the Seahawks, I feel like a broken record at this point, but I don't think anything's going to change. We're going to continue to see a split backfield between Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Funnily enough, last week, Ken Walker, 27 snaps, Charbonnet, 23. Ken Walker, 14 attempts, Charbonnet, 14 attempts. Here's where things got really annoying for any of the Walker and Charbonnet owners. George Halani had 7 rushing attempts and ended up getting into the end zone. He had a rushing touchdown, and that was really frustrating, of course, to all of the Seahawks running back owners. It's going to be a split backfield. I don't think that's going to stop. So they're both spot starts at best. Low-end RB3s, middle RB3s, flex options. They're desperate plays at this point. And it doesn't help that the Rams are the second worst matchup for your fantasy running backs. It doesn't help that the Seahawks are dominating through the air with JSN. Rashid Shaheed should get more involved. So it's a risky play for sure. They might need to be labeled risky rather than spot starts. On the opposite side, we are going to go ahead and play Kyren Williams with a ton of confidence. Yes, you are starting to see the Rams utilize both of their running backs. That's definitely a little bit concerning. In this last game, Blake Corum, 13 rushing attempts, Kyren Williams, 14. However, Kyren is still out there for the vast majority of the snaps. He's still used in the passing scenarios, but you are starting to see a concerning trend where his snap percentage is starting to trend downwards. This team said they wanted to be a committee. They're also showing it on the field that they want it to be a committee. So it's a little bit concerning, but still, the offense is so good. They also dominated the Niners in this game, so they had the opportunity to use Blake Corum a little bit more. I'm still going to start Kyren Williams, but Blake Corum is not the worst desperation Hail Mary play out there. Okay, let's go to the Ravens at the Browns. 41.5-point over-under. Ravens are favored by 8.5 points. Derrick Henry, look, I am still going to label him a must-start, but I will say there's a lot of things going against him this week. There is massive, massive bust potential for Derrick Henry. I don't know if you guys remember the last time he faced the Cleveland Browns. That was in week number 2. He had 23 rushing yards, 2.1 yards per carry, and he had 1.3 fantasy points total. Okay, it was a disaster. However, the Ravens are starting to really click. Lamar Jackson is healthy. They're on a winning streak. And I do think at some point, elite offense will beat elite defense. Lamar Jackson is just that dude. I do believe they're going to be able to extend drives. So I have labeled him my RB17. Last week, he had 47 snaps, 23 total touches. I mean, if you can get that every single week, that's what you dream of. The disappointing part is he only turned it into 11.4 fantasy points. Didn't get into the end zone. We're going to need Derrick Henry touchdowns for him to have that ceiling. It's a bad matchup. I'm recognizing there could be bust potential, but at the same time, in my leagues, there's just no way I have a better bet on than Derrick Henry to start, but you will see my rankings. Maybe you do in your leagues. Okay, how about Quinshon Judkins? It is a top 5 matchup for running backs against the Ravens. We are going to go ahead and label Judkins a must start. Unfortunately, the offense in Cleveland is not generating many sustained drives, but fortunately for Judkins, he is the unquestioned dude there. 25 total touches in this game. That gave him a safe floor of 10.5 fantasy points. As long as, they continue to use him in that workhorse fashion, you can continue to start him. Okay, let's move on to the Chiefs at the Broncos. 44.5-point over under. And the Chiefs are favored, even though it's in Denver. Two backfields that are very confusing. So let's just go team by team, starting with the Chiefs. So I'm ranking these guys as if Pacheco will not play. So that would make Kareem Hunt a spot start. I assume he's the goal line guy, the short yardage guy for the Chiefs. A very good offense that should be competitive in this game. If Isaiah Pacheco is active, that just makes everything way too messy for me, okay? That makes Pacheco and Hunt both very risky starts, and in an ideal world, you don't play either because the Broncos defense is pretty good. Now, on the opposite side of that, with the Denver Broncos, I am projecting J.K. Dobbins to not play this week with that hip drop tackle he suffered last week. And if he doesn't go out there and play, R.J. Harvey would be a spot start. I assume he gets most of the work. Sean Payton could do anything, right? He always gets a little crazy, but I assume he finally lets R.J. Harvey be featured, but it's a terrible matchup against the Chiefs. Like if there were any week for RJ Harvey to be featured, this is the one week where you just don't want him to be featured because the Chiefs could shut down your rushing attack anyway. But in the event that Dobbins is healthy, I prefer to start Dobbins, and then RJ Harvey is not really a playable name in that world. That takes us to Sunday Night Football. We've got the Lions at the Eagles, 48.5 point over under, very high over under. There's a lot of matchups that we've gone into detail because it's needed it. This is not one of those matchups. It's simple. You start Gibbs, you start Montgomery. You start them because they're a part of one of the best offenses in the NFL, and Dan Campbell's calling plays now. You start Saquon Barkley because even though it's a terrible matchup, he's Saquon freaking Barkley, okay? We don't need to waste time. All right, last week we did finish 10th in the FastDraft Quick 6 Super Slam contest. I want to get first again like we got in week 8. You can see the lineup that we used in week number 10. I won some money. I want to win again in week number 11. So I'm going to submit my lineups. You can submit yours. It's very simple. All you have to do is choose 6 non-quarterbacks and set your boosters. Download the FastDraft app. Use my promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50. And then you're going to get my week 11 rankings completely free. You can check that out in the pinned comment if you want to have some fun. Last matchup we're going to go into here, Monday Night Football, Cowboys at Raiders. One of the highest over-unders of the week, 50.5 points. The Cowboys are favorites. Javonte Williams should smash in this game. He is the guy, a part of an elite offense, a workhorse. The Raiders are a top 7 matchup for your running backs. And then Ashton Jeanty with the Raiders should have a great game. He's starting to be more and more consistent because the Raiders are using him on the ground and in the air. The Cowboys are the 4th best matchup for your running backs. However, we do have to recognize that they have a new name in town, Quinnen Williams. What will that do? The trade they made from the Cowboys, what will that do to their rushing attack? They might be a better rushing defense than they have been in games past, but still, I don't think you can sit Jeanty. Guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love. Subscribe if you found any value in today's video. And of course, our wide receiver version of this video will be out later in the day, so make sure you're subscribed and you've got your notifications on so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching the video. Love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at sign up to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.